This is the Jill Bennett Show on 980 CKNW.
Well, we are hearing from Canada's new Finance Minister, Dominic LeBlanc. We'll have more details on that coming up this half hour. Right now, we are going to shift gears once again and take a look at what is happening in Surrey. We heard earlier today through a news conference from the Surrey Teachers Association as well as the Surrey District Parent Advisory Council, and they held a news conference to address what they say are growing concerns about gaps in the system, specifically when we are talking about vulnerable students in Surrey public schools. So let's check in with Tammy Murphy, president of CUPE728. Tammy, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm glad you're listening.
Well, I'm glad you were able to join us and talk more about what was addressed earlier today. So what are these growing concerns when it comes to vulnerable students?
Well, what's happening in the system now, and one of the things I talked about earlier today is I've been in the system for 27 years as an IESW, which is what an education assistant is called in Surrey now. And the programs have changed. A lot of what we started off doing was we taught kids personal skills to be able to survive in life. We adapted education for them so that they had the ability to be able to sit in a classroom and keep along with the other students. We did essential life skills. What we're doing now in schools is not the same. So what's happened with us with the underfunding, we don't have enough staff to actually implement education as it should be implemented, which is to support students that of all needs, whether they're struggling slightly academically or whether they need a personal care as well as adaptations to get through the day. That's always been what an education assistant and what the education system has done to help children with diverse needs. It's not doing that anymore. There's no funding in the system to have enough staff to be able to do that. So what we're doing now is we're band-aiding. We're just putting on the bare minimum of what we need to be able to take care of kids and to keep them in classes. And sometimes not even in classes. Sometimes we have to keep them, they'll be in a separate area so that they can decompress because school is overstimulating for them. They're not getting enough out of it. So we try, the school system says that it's an inclusive model, but it really truly isn't inclusive unless everybody's getting the education that they require.
And I know these concerns, or some of these concerns, have been raised before, and we've heard from elected officials in the provincial government that they were dealing with the shortage of assistants and the staff members needed to address these concerns. So has that not happened?
No, we are at a crucial level today. I mean, I got a call earlier today about an injury that someone had sustained to an eye because there's not enough people to help deal with the students when they're dysregulated. We are not getting enough people. There are not enough people coming into the profession, let alone when we actually are in the schools, that we have enough people in the school to work with these kids.
And when you say you got a call about an eye injury, involving a student or an employee?
So an employee was injured at work and has injured their eye. So I'll be going to that school to try and help out the system with that. That's just one of many injuries that happen throughout the job. To no fault of the kids. The kids are dysregulated. They don't have the supports that they need. They're not getting listened to in the sense that some are nonverbal. So they don't have the ability. And without the right amount of people inside classrooms to be able to figure out what this child needs, they act out. That's our biggest concern right now is we don't have the people here to give this proper education. And because of that, we have other issues happening. We have aggression in the classroom. We have kids falling through the cracks. We have kids that just need a little extra support and aren't getting that. So what ends up happening with them is they don't finish school, right? Or they get pushed through school, and what happens to them when they're outside of school? They don't have a proper network system set up for them because they never got looked at because they weren't the kids that were needing the most attention at the time.
So how many people, or do you know how many support workers would need to be hired at this point to even get close to the ratios that are supposed to be in place?
Our failure to fills for positions are really high. That's just the positions that we actually need to have filled on the tables now. To be able to actually have proper education, we need way more education assistants than we have right now. I've asked for days in the life for an IESW. The the things that I've received are absolutely heartbreaking. It's disheartening to see how thinly stretched people are. Like I have one, for instance, a lady was talking about how she starts her day with 3 students. One is a one-on-one student that requires complete one-on-one support, but they've stacked 2 other kids on top because there's nobody to take care of them. She leaves that student, goes to another student who's not diagnosed, because a lot of the kids in our system are not diagnosed because it takes too long to be able to get kids in for diagnosis. And this is a primary grade student. Then she leaves that student to make it to recess time, which I believe starts around 10 o'clock. I'm a high school EA, so I believe recess starts at 10 o'clock. She works outside with the kid for recess who is very dysregulated, and the overstimulation of the groups sometimes makes them a little aggressive with other students. Then she comes back in and starts in her classroom with her 3 students again. I mean, and that's a snippet of the day. She's got less than some EAs have. Some EAs have 6 kids in a classroom. And they won't all be designated. There'll be a ton that are there just needing assistance and just being helped because we don't want them to slip through the cracks.
What do you do next? I know this news conference was called to raise these concerns and to tell the exact stories that you just shared. So what happens next?
What we're hoping is that we get proper funding for education. We are talking about inclusive education. Inclusive education doesn't mean just going to your catchment school. Inclusive education means that we are actually educating our students. We're not just trying to get by the day and be the safest we can be, trying to keep everybody else safe. We are actually teaching. We are working with kids with the individual needs that they have and supporting them, as opposed to using a blanket kind of way to be able to work through these situations. Kids are not textbook, they're individual, and we have to be assessing the education system individualized for these kids, and that's not what we're doing. We're just getting by is what we're doing. We're just getting by, and education isn't about just getting by. Education is truly about trying to teach and better kids, and if we don't do that, we're not going to have a future for these kids.
Well, I appreciate you raising these concerns and sharing them with us today. Tammy, we'll leave it there for today, but thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
That is Tammy Murphy, president of CUPE728. Again, one of a group of key speakers addressing, again, the growing concerns about gaps when it comes to supports for vulnerable students, specifically in the Surrey School District. Well, just